I don't think people realize how many territories you worked and how early on you started in '79. I think it was your first stuff. So we had NWA, Los Angeles, Memphis, Portland, Georgia, Mid-South Continental, and of course Houston, where you grew up for a period and you got in with Paul Boesch. My first question about you is, before we get into the '90s, is the Paul Boesch Memorial show in conjunction with Vince McMahon. I was wondering if you could give me the tee up to how it started, the show itself, and maybe the fallout from afterwards.
Well, it was a weird time for the business because things were changing. Back then, there were territories, and of course, Georgia was taking over with the cable invention and things like that. But I was wrestling in Alabama at the time, and Paul had just decided. Now, he didn't just decide to retire, but there were some issues and some elements that kind of went into that. Paul Boesch was an old school guy, and he was broke in by a fellow named Jack Pfeffer. Are you familiar with Jack Pfeffer?
I am. Wasn't he a bit of a carny and all the fake
No,
Bruno
he was very much
Sammartinos
a
and stuff?
carny. He was not just a bit. He was very much.
Yes, of course.
I'm sorry. Yes, he was a bit of a carny, and so was Paul in a sense. But Paul was a great guy. He really was. He was a great man. He gave not just myself but Bruce a great opportunity to work in the office, his wrestling office, which they had in every territory. We would work in the offices. I started when I was 15 during the summers in high school. Then I was doing Friday night in the Coliseum, sitting by Paul at ringside as his assistant director, which all it meant I wore a headset and put the right commercial in front of him and did any runs we needed to do during the matches. So Bruce and I both have the utmost respect and love for Paul Boesch. But times were changing, and Paul didn't like change like a lot of us. Sometimes as you go along, we're comfortable. We don't want our stuff to change. Leave it alone. And things were changing. And Bruce was young. Bruce has always been ambitious. Bruce has always been aggressive, and he's got a drive. So eventually, Vince and Bruce met up, and when they came to Houston, Bruce and Vince got close. And eventually Paul decided it's time for him to hang it up. So Vince wanted to do it right and give Paul a great retirement show. Flew me in from Alabama. Flew I think, Andre was doing a movie or Hogan was doing a movie. Maybe somebody was doing a movie. They flew him in. Moscaris was doing a movie. That's who it was. No, Moscaris. They flew Moscaris in and flew him right back out. It was an enormous bill. It was an enormous payoff. It took a lot of effort by a lot of people. And I think Paul was feeling some resentment. And I think Paul didn't want the business to be taken over by a guy who was taking over and just taking over everything. I think Paul could see the writing on the wall, and they had a discussion and said, look, let me just go out the right way. And I'm sure you've heard the story about what happened after that.
Possibly about the split of the payoff between Vince and Paul.
Sure. That's it.
No one wants to hear me say it, so you tell the story.
Well, I wasn't privy to the conversation. Of course, other people were. But the bottom line was there were a lot of expenses on the show. There were a lot of expenses on this card. And at the end of the day, I believe that there were some part of the Houston Wrestling affiliation that felt Paul should get the entire house and Titan Sports should pay everything. And I don't think that was the original agreement. I'm not sure. Again, I'm only speaking from third and fourth party knowledge. But at the end of it, I think it worked out okay. And feelings were mended, or maybe they weren't. I don't know. I'd heard both sides of the story, man. So I can't